let's start it off with probably the biggest movie that we haven't talked about yet on Intercut, and that is Black Adam. The hierarchy of power is changing in the DCU,
Literally.
DCEU, whichever one. It is the movie that The Rock has been trying to star in for 16 years. I think it is now. 2007 was the first time that they published reports about The Rock trying to be in a Black Adam movie. The superhero landscape has changed a lot since then, but I I don't know. This movie feels in a lot of ways like it is trying to be a superhero movie from like maybe 10 years ago. It borrows a lot of elements from, I think, more successful superhero films and integrates them here into its story about a ancient hero who's freed from his earthly tomb to help aid a series of commoners, I guess, and then also engage with the Justice Society. It's a mess of ideas, but audiences have responded mostly favorably. It's got a pretty good Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Art, where are you on Black Adam? With the critics, with the audiences, or somewhere in between?
I feel like most audiences from the theaters that I've seen, from the theaters that I've been in, and from the posts that I've seen online, they're there for one scene. I don't think they care about the, what is this, 2 hours and 4 minutes that precede the one scene in this movie. I feel most people have already seen it. We're going to skirt around it. For the most part, it's a super scene. A lot of people really liked it. I think
Yeah.
that's what most fans are reviewing, right? You're talking about the hierarchy in the DCU. I think they said is what it is now because it's not DC. They dropped the E, and now it's DCU,
It's cleaner.
and the D stands for DC, so it's DCCU. They have changed complete power. And in that, you do have new CEOs, one of them being James Gunn. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to see like what's going to be revamped. I find it funny because as you're describing it, is it a movie that stands on its own, or is it a movie where the fans are really excited because it's a DC property?
Right.
And we're at that weird moment where the new CEOs and the ending of this movie are like, we're taking this in a new direction, but the new direction is a rearview mirror
The old direction.
of the old direction. So I'm
We're
just
in a
really
brand new direction, the same as the old direction, but it's
I
brand
don't know
new
what's
this
going
time.
on, bro.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. Yeah. So it's like I understand the people who've been wanting that why they're happy, but there's people who are like, we're finally doing something new. I was like, it sounds like the same. Like literally, it's the same characters. So I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, it's also beyond the whole like we're doing something new, but we're doing it old again. This movie visually is so indebted to Zack Snyder's style, whether it is like just the sort of darker, grayer look to some of these set pieces, or it is the like ultra slow mo
Oh
super
my
scenes, like just
goodness.
borrowing from everything that he's done and from films like Watchmen going forward. It
Yeah.
is
Very
so
300.
so yeah, so very 300, very I don't know, just very indebted to his vision of what a superhero film should look like. And the very first time that it does the sort of slowed down action scene, I thought it was kind of fun. It's sort of like the 15th time we've gotten the Quicksilver effect
It's
in a movie,
Quicksilver.
but it's still decently fun. But when you're watching a 2 hour action film and maybe like 50 minutes of it are in super slow-mo, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like padding almost, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit like, let's get to the actual stuff.
Especially because the premise of the story is that you're telling it in two timelines. One, which was the past, I believe they say 5 or 6,000 years ago, is
Yeah.
when Tet Adam was just a regular person who lived in this fictional city that they have there in the Middle East. Though it's still very much representative of a Middle East city where they were slaves. They get taken over, and in the present time, they've never seen this hero figure, this godlike figure named Tet Adam, and now they're looking to kind of break out of that. And a lot of the people who you have in this movie, some of which are stars that I very much enjoyed out of Netflix shows this year, Mo, who's been in Rami,
Mm-hmm.
who has his own show that I think is one of the best of the year over on Netflix. He plays the sibling to one of the women who's looking for the crown, who's looking
Yeah.
for the stuff that she needs to be able to resurrect Tet Adam. She has her own son there, and you're kind of getting the story where they're like, yeah, we're the people, the refugees who are kind of like outcast out of our own place,
Hmm.
and we feel like there's a very American Justice Society league that's in here trying to help but not really
Yeah.
help, and no one's really doing much, and we need to take a stand. I'm like, wow, this is very subtle metaphors. And then you got Kanye in the trailer music, which perfectly now blends in
Right.
with what they're trying to go for. You have such a story that's trying to, I don't really want to call it nuanced, but it's the second of these that we've gotten from the DC. The previous one being Wonder Woman 1984, 5, whatever that was,
Hmm.
which was also a really interesting, like, we're being self-aware of what's happening overseas and like the different, powers that be. And yeah, we're just going to pretend like our hero, be it in Wonder Woman or here, doesn't come into clash in some way. And I think that's where it contrasts with its goofiness. Where like, yeah, we kind of want to use your real world landscape, but then it's also just The Rock, just The
Yeah.
Rock being the first one who's ever killed, and we laugh at that because we're like, well, you're technically not. In the world that you're in, this new DCU, we have seen heroes kill.
Hmm.
But it is starting to feel more integrated, even if it is fragmented. It feels like a TV cameo when you see someone from a
Yeah.
Suicide Squad. And
No.
Suicide Squad is big, but it's someone
Mhm.
from there coming in just to like tune, literally FaceTime in, zoom in, and you're like,
This is
okay,
this is the closest that a DC film has felt to the Marvel extended universe kind of thing, right? Where just somebody will drop in.
almost,
And I'm not talking
almost,
tonally. I'm talking just like the way that you're saying characters will show up,
yeah.
that the stinger has like implications for the future films.
It
It
feels like they come in with a lower third that tells you what property they were first featured in.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I don't know, it to me it all felt a little like
Jumbled.
they're straining to a little like they're trying too hard to give the fans the things they think the fans will want rather than just doing something good or interesting. I also know that I'm not a big like comic books person, so I'm like going to uh, whatever came first and stuff like that. I don't really know. I know it's all a mix of like copyright infringement and plagiarism and inspiration and whatever, but like why is every single hero in this movie a copy of a hero from a different movie? Like, it's not enough that like
Don't do them like
they're the
that, bro.
Justice
You don't want to have that
Society.
conversation. Back up. You try to have a comic book talk right
I
now.
kind of want to because it's just like they don't have anybody that doesn't feel like somebody we saw in a movie 2 years ago.
With the yes, the Atom dude and the way that he grows up, yes, it's very much like Ant-Man. What you are playing, what you are discussing now, is all of this happened years ago in comics, and they're all
Yeah,
fighting to be the first person to adapt
right.
it to the big screen because they know the moment they adapt it to the big screen, everybody's going to be like, well, that's the one that came first, regardless of which one
Exactly.
actually did. Yes,
Exactly. And
and
that's
I
where
agree
I
with you.
am
There should
because
be
it's
directors
yeah.
realizing we've seen this. I know this is Adam's power, but we know that everyone who's going to buy a ticket for a movie has already seen it done better there. So what are you going to do different? And it doesn't ever seem like they try.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
And I
anything, it
wonder
almost feels like they want to be comfortable with like, okay, we're just going to mimic what you already
right.
did and we'll be able to get away with it. It's like that's not the
No, I
point.
wonder. I wonder if it's almost like they're hoping people will spend less time. People who aren't paying that close attention will be like, "Oh, it's like the Ant-Man guy, right?" Not
Yeah.
even noticing it's a whole different
And
character.
as long as they combine it, yeah, I think they're like the
Doctor Fate,
Justice.
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, they're
It's like an
another
older
league
Doctor
thing.
Strange, right?
Yeah, the helmet that he puts it on, he gets the
Yeah,
powers. I think that they're really trying hard to push him forward, which is funny because this is a movie that clashed a lot with Shazam. And I think you've seen Shazam. I'm curious to see how you would compare both of them because, as it turned out, he didn't want to make a cameo in Shazam because The Rock counts punches.
right.
And one of our jokes for the cameo scene, why did it take so long to announce it? The one right at the end is because they were counting stares at each other as Dwayne likes to do in his movies. But the fact that he didn't appear in Shazam because he felt that no, it needs to be an organic character who grows out of it. It can't just be a part of another movie. And then he's got the whole Justice Society there as a part of another movie.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And his cameo is crazier because if you remember the cameo at the end of Shazam, I don't know if you recall it,
A very similar cameo.
is a very similar cameo, but they didn't get the sign off
Right.
because Papa Dwayne Johnson got the sign off. And it reminds me a lot of when the Spider-Verse boys had requested the voices of certain Spider boys who were the character before and they got denied because they were already working on what would end up being um, No Way Home. So
Mhm.
it's like you still see these dealings behind the scenes, and now that what's his name is in charge, James Gunn, I think a lot of people are excited, but I don't think they realize like switching of powers doesn't stop the problems that come with such a big franchise. The
Yeah.
one thing Marvel's been really good at is that they have so many problems behind the scenes, but it never becomes vocal. The restore the Snyder Cut thing is probably the biggest backlash a company can get to being bullied into releasing a cut. And they're like there's no release to whatever cuts for Marvel. There's a release the Suicide Squad cut. There's a release the Birds of Prey. There's a release so many for DC. So I don't think that's going to change. I know people are excited for Gunn, but I see there having to be like a much bigger overhaul to get to the success. I know we're not talking quality, but at least the
Yeah.
success of what we can all agree the MCU has gotten.
Yeah, and the MCU only really got as huge as it did through releasing lots of films, really building them up, really building anticipation for the clashes. And maybe DC is trying to skip a couple steps, but they've at least got like some big properties and big movie stars attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking earlier about comparing this one to Shazam, and I think ultimately, like, I think Shazam's a lot more successful in that it feels like it knows its tone and sticks to it. Whereas Black Adam is sort of trying to be too many things to too many people because somebody in the comments, Sassy Caterpillar, called it DC's Terminator. And there's like definitely a Terminator influence here on how they treat the character and how the character is this sort of like guardian unwittingly to some regular people, but at the same time it's trying to do the kind of like meta superhero comedy that Marvel has kind of done a lot of. And there's like all the posters in the kids room and stuff like that. I don't know, none of the comedy really worked for me here. And when it does try to get into like the traumatic flashback stuff, it feels like it's just padding the movie. Like it's so tacked on. I don't know. I think that while The Rock is decently fun in these types of roles, there's just like not a whole lot of for him to do in Black
That's what
Adam,
you
at
said.
least thus far.
It's the 2000s type of action film that's
Yeah.
a little updated, but it doesn't really do anything new. Your standard paper cut characters. There's not really much to him other than being a quieter rock this time around. And I just wish the surrounding characters from Mo to the small kid weren't the cliche like, oh, I'm gonna say a pop culture reference right here, because then it does feel derivative of a lot of 80s movies. But hey, we'll see. I'm a little disappointed we didn't get Shazam this year. I don't know. It was supposed to be December. They pushed it back. I don't know. It's because they felt
Yeah.
that Black Adam needed more breathing room, but I agree with
I
you. I'm
think
more
they
on the
thought
Shazam
James
side.
Cameron needed more breathing room.
I don't know what they needed. Well, I guess that's right, yeah, because they now
Yeah.
need to please him. But I'm looking more forward to Shazam. They got the dynamic down.